So G2 really has made a difference in the way people buy software, the way I actually think about marketing software. I was a little bit skeptical when I heard about G2 in the beginning. It felt like, hey, is this really how people want to buy software? And I have since been convinced that it is one of the most important ways people think about software. And so G2 has turned me around in the way software buying happens. And he has a front row seat to what's happening out there in the marketplace. So repeat entrepreneur, we're gonna talk about all the companies that Godard's been a part of, but you know him as the CEO and founder of G2. Welcome, Godard.
All right, well,
to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Yuman, for having me.
Yeah. What was your first car?
It was, and I'm going to date myself as well, 1976 Dodge Colt.
Ooh.
And I remember I got that. I was 16 years old. I was in high school near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Is that one of those small cars, like the Deathmobiles?
It kind of was. It was very, actually, I remember my parents, one of their friends gave my parents that car for free. And so it didn't have a lot of value. And then even worse, I think, within my first 2 weeks of driving it, I got in an accident. On my way to school, I was running late, and anyway, I sideswiped another car, and then I quickly continued to school. It actually led to the police showing up at school. Because they're like, oh, you sideswiped someone. And I didn't hit and run. I thought I did all the right things, but apparently I didn't. So anyway.
I am glad you're here.
Some bad memories.
Yes, I'm glad we made it.
But I think one thing Yuan and I do share, we're also seasoned, or you could say older entrepreneurs.
Yeah, there we go.
And I think we've both been seasoned. We've both been building companies for 25 years.
Yeah.
Which I think now we're no longer the cool kids.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do have this G2 AI badge and I'll talk more about it, but I think AI is obviously the massive shift in our industry. And I saw so many of you are in SaaS, but certainly in software, I do think it's changing everything, including how we innovate, how we deliver our products, how we support success, also how we discover products. And so that's going to be a big theme of what I'm talking about is how do we see AI changing? How are we adapting at G2? And also how is it changing how software buyers discover and use applications? And so I think it's a really exciting shift. And I do also, having been built since 1999, it does feel a bit like when I started, it was a dot-com boom. And back then I was the young, and maybe in hindsight, clueless entrepreneur. But now there's a whole new generation of entrepreneurs, obviously building all these amazing AI apps, and I think Yuman and I are trying to keep up. So really excited to be here with all of you, and also especially in Chicago. And some of you may know this, but we actually did start G2 in Chicago, or at least those of you that are from Chicago and Chicagoland, because at the time we were starting G2, I was living in Lake Forest and Northern Burbs, and actually we put our first office in Highland Park, Illinois, of all places. And it was right next to the metro station there. And then as we started to grow, we moved it down into the Loop. And our headquarters are actually here in Chicago now, 100 South Wacker. And so also thank you for Yuman inviting me. And also nice to have a home game, at least for G2. And yes, I do want to talk to you about the future of software in this age of AI, how it's changing, what's hype, where's there opportunity for all of us, and what still matters. And certainly, I think what will always matter is customers. I also learned that the hard way as an entrepreneur, because my first company, Big Machines, I'll talk about it more, but we did almost die after starting in that euphoric .com era. I was able to raise a bunch of money my first year, but then I remember 3 years in, we were almost out of business. And I realized, kind of learned the hard way, that yeah, all that really matters is customers, right? Winning customers, and then even more importantly, making sure your customers succeed, and then you can grow your relationships with your customers. So I kind of had to go back to the basics. And I think that will always obviously matter. And I think one thing I will talk about, I do think customer relationships, customer voice are even more important in the age of AI, because I think also the number one thing ChatGPT likes to train on, it's actually real customer content, real customer conversations. And it's part of the reason I think we've also seen Reddit be so influential now to all of the AI engines. And we are seeing the AI engines, they love training on real customer conversations, real customer content. And so I think that puts customer success even more at the center of most businesses, because obviously it's your lifeblood, it's your revenue, but I think now it's also gonna be more and more the basis of your marketing. And we've also always believed that at G2, that customer voice, because there is so much marketing noise, and now with AI, there's more noise than ever, right? And then with AI, we can all pump out more marketing, more blogs, more websites. But at the end of the day, what do people believe? I think people believe peers. And I think before you make a decision, I'm sure customer success software, that's why you're all here, right? Those of you that are prospects, I'm sure you're gonna ask the customers here, hey, what do you really think about Turn Zero? Is Yuman really a good guy? I mean, he's pretty funny, but can I trust him? And so I think that in this age of noise and AI hype, I do think ultimately your prospects are also, they're gonna wanna hear from your customers. And that was always the basis for G2, was let's amplify that customer voice. And it also allows you to turn customer success into more of a weapon, I would say, because by amplifying your customer voice, you can now really also drive your marketing. And again, I think in AI that's more important than ever, because that's what the AI engines want to train on. They want to train on your customer voice. And so I think it's a really exciting time for all of us. And maybe before I continue talking about more trends, I did want to share a little bit more about myself. So I am an old entrepreneur, like Yuman. And like Yuman, built multiple companies. And depending on how you count them, but 6 where I've been co-founder, as CEO, or as executive chairman. My day job is very much G2. And we're still very much, we're over a decade old, but I do feel like it's still day one at G2, and especially now aiming to really reinvent ourselves, make ourselves more relevant in the age of AI. We did become a unicorn a couple years ago. That was exciting, but I think, as Yuman also knows, it's also just kind of a higher bar, because now we have to build a much bigger, more impactful company, but I'm enjoying that. And before G2, we built 3 CPQ software companies, configure, price, quote software. The first one was Big Machines, and actually Big Machines is what brought me to Chicago. We started the company in Silicon Valley in 2000 in that dot-com boom. But then I also realized, well, we hit tough times. 3 years in, we were almost going out of business because we weren't signing up enough customers, and we were actually an early cloud, in hindsight, too early. We were doing cloud CPQ software in 2000. And in hindsight, I think cloud or CPQ cloud didn't really take off till 2007, so we had a few hard years. And my co-founder, Chris Schutz, he was from Chicago, so we actually moved the company from the Silicon Valley to Chicago, partly to survive. And we were serving manufacturers, so we thought it'd be a good place to do it. And eventually the company worked and was acquired by Oracle, but it was a long, hard journey. And as I mentioned, that's where I really learned just how important customer success is, because we also didn't have that many customers. I remember 3 years in, when we moved to Chicago, we only had 12 customers, which was depressing. I think my business plan said we should have had 400 customers by then. We only had 12. But I think the one thing we did well, we stayed really close to those customers. They became our best friends, our evangelists. And so ultimately, when the market came around in 2007, we were there and we learned with our customers. And so I think, yeah, as an entrepreneur, nothing more important. And after Big Machines was acquired by Oracle, we built another one called SteelBrick. And those of you that are Salesforce customers today, it's Salesforce CPQ, Salesforce Revenue Cloud. And that company was a much quicker success because we started in 2014 when cloud was hot, and we knew the market, and we built it specifically for Salesforce. And we did also build another one, Logic AI, and which was just acquired by ServiceNow this year. My Big Machines co-founder, Chris, who moved me to Chicago, he was the CEO of that company. And I think one of the reasons they were acquired very quickly, they actually had 99% gross retention, 140% net revenue retention. And I'm jealous, I don't have anywhere near that at G2. But I think the third company, that's what made Chris such a good CEO. That was always his number one. Every management meeting started with customer success. And they sold to very large customers like NVIDIA, Cisco, and they just did a phenomenal job with customer success. And I think ServiceNow actually shares that. I think ServiceNow also has 99% gross retention. And again, I'm jealous, I don't have it at G2. But I do think, I think for all of us, that's the most important thing, right? How do we retain and grow our customers? And when I'm not building companies, we did actually during the pandemic, we moved to Boulder, Colorado. So that's a little bit about me. And then G2, hopefully most of you, especially if you're in SaaS, you've heard of it. Hopefully you're on G2. And yes, leave a review for Human and Churn Zero. 1,469 amazing reviews on G2, 4.7 stars. And so, yeah, really confirming that Human does indeed, and Churn Zero takes great care of their customers. And yes, if you have a chance, please leave another review. We have over 3 million reviews. And we do have now about 4,000 customers, and I did raise my hand 3 times earlier because we do serve SMBs, mid-market, and enterprise. And it is challenging to do all 3. And we also find we need different customer success motions for all 3. SMB, we're actually now trying to do almost all digital because we also found no matter what we do, the churn is really high. And then on the other end, we do also work like Salesforce as a customer, ServiceNow as a customer, AWS as a customer. On that end, we do have an enterprise, also customer success team, account management team, where we're obviously also trying to give them very bespoke care. But probably like for many of you, it's kind of hard to serve all those segments at once. And I think the massive shift, we're all seeing it, we're all feeling it, but there's this really exciting shift. And I also hear this from my investors now. And probably a lot of us do. They're like, oh, Godard, are you that old legacy guy? The old legacy company? Yeah, that was started. And I think that the dividing line really started in November 2022 when ChatGPT 3.5 came out. And all of a sudden, everyone saw the potential. And I sometimes am jealous of the new startups, that start truly AI first. And I also hear about this from our board members. They're like, I think one of our board members is investor in these new coding platforms, and he's like, oh, they're all doing 2 million in revenue per employee, and like, why aren't you doing that? But I think it's a massive shift and opportunity. It's an opportunity, I think, for all of us to reimagine our products, reimagine how we serve our customers. And I do believe very much, I think it was an HBR quote, but the AI won't replace us humans. But humans with AI will replace humans without AI. And so I think that's what we're encouraging everyone at G2 to do is use as much AI as you can. It is kind of alarming our CFO because he just said we've doubled our spend on AI in the past year. Because I have encouraged everyone, obviously engineers, they're using Claude Code. But right now it's kind of like, hey, try whatever tool you want to. And then in the future, we'll figure out which of those tools really work. But I think right now it's a time to innovate and to try and experiment and learn. And I imagine most of you are doing that. And in terms of the transformations I've seen in my career, and Human's seen his career, I've seen a lot. And actually, I was born way back in the early 70s. I was born in Germany. And my father was a pump manufacturing entrepreneur. And I think that's a picture of me when I was about 7 years old. But I remember I went to his office and he got his first mainframe. And I remember it was like these huge memory plates that he had to put in his office. And he was really excited he could start to do some accounting with it. And I'm sure that had less power than my iPhone does today. But it was kind of cool to see that. And then I remember in the 80s when I was in high school, I got my first computer, which was an Apple IIe. And I remember it was just amazing. My penmanship was never very good. I could type and use a word processor. And then in the 90s, I remember my first job as a consultant. I remember also then the first day when I used Netscape's browser, and I'm like, this is amazing. I no longer have to go to our library. And as a consultant in the 90s, we actually had research librarians, and now I could just look everything up online. And then I remember, then starting big machines and, well, especially when the cloud came along, obviously that really made all of our companies successful, and obviously leaders like Salesforce, the AWS platform, but that led to a huge boom. But I do believe, while I'm still excited to be an entrepreneur, I do believe now with what ChatGPT 3.5 unleashed, that I do believe AI will be even bigger and a bigger opportunity for our whole industry. And we're also seeing it on G2. No surprise, our fastest growing parts of our G2 marketplace are all of our AI categories. And since ChatGPT 3.5 came out, we now have 56 new AI categories, things like vector databases that probably, including myself, nobody knew what they were in 2021, but now all of a sudden they're essential AI infrastructure. Almost 5,000 new AI products as all these new startups are starting to seize the day, as well as, of course, all the existing vendors, adding new AI products. And AI reviews are also our fastest growing, with over 89,000 AI reviews. And we expect this certainly to continue. And as I mentioned, we're also transforming our own company. How do we become AI first? Because we were started well before ChatGPT 3.5, and we are doing a lot of innovation. I think one of our coolest innovations, those of you in customer success, we now offer voice reviews. We acquired a startup called Unsurvey, and I always loved their vision from the beginning, because frankly, nobody likes filling in web surveys. And the G2 review has always been a web survey form. It's a bit painful, so thank you for filling them out. But I think now the future, you can do reviews with voice, with video, even more like a Loom recording, so your customers can give you feedback by voice, by video, which one is a much more pleasant experience. But the other interesting thing, we're finding we're getting 3 to 10 times more words, more customer feedback when we're doing AI first reviews, conversational reviews, and that also produces 3 to 10 times more tokens, which is then all content that ChatGPT 3.5 can train on. And as I mentioned earlier, ChatGPT, they all love training on conversational customer voice content. And so we're really excited that that can then also increase your visibility in the people are calling it AEO now, answer engine optimization, but also increase your AI visibility. And so we're really excited to also bring that out for Churn Zero customers. But those of you in SaaS, it's another way to capture customer voice more easily and create a lot more training content for the AI engines all at the same time. We're also doubling down on our AI research. We'll be speaking also at Dreamforce next week in San Francisco about all the AI trends. And of course, like everyone, we're applying AI across the board inside our own company, including our support desk. We're doing with a combination of Salesforce Service Cloud Forethought, but aiming, and I think we're finding over 80% automatic case deflection now, automatic case resolution. Although one challenge we're having is actually get our customers to change the behavior, and to actually go into the AI first versus still calling on their customer success friend. And that's actually probably more the challenge now than technology, is how do we get our customers to engage with our AI first rather than maybe calling their friendly customer success rep. And then also retraining our team. I guess it's great to be helpful, but if you can retrain our customers to engage with the AI first, then we can actually deflect a lot of the more simple cases and focus on the more strategic advice to our customers. And specifically, probably like many of you, and probably why you're here, we are seeing great opportunities to leverage AI, and I know you can do this with Churn Zero. But to do more proactive retention, more proactive nudges. At G2, we actually have a ton of data on how our customers are doing, how many reviews they have, how are they doing versus the competition. But it's always hard. How do you turn that across 4,000 customers into actions at scale? And there we're applying AI to draw out what are the key insights for the customers, and then also to help our customer success, our account managers, do more proactive outreach based on unique insights. And with AI, we can automate a lot of that. We're also using AI to help drive expansion. And as I mentioned, we do have many large enterprise customers with whom we aim to get on a regular QBR cadence. But also we can generate much more informative, much more data, insightful, because we do have all this data in the marketplace, how they're performing, how their competition's doing. We can turn all of that into much more compelling executive briefings, much more compelling QBRs. And we can integrate much more of our own customers' feedback. We do also use Gong, for example. And there's many of those, but we're using that to record all our customer conversations. And then we can also draw much better insights, both to better get a temperature of how that account is doing, how their adoption scoring, what's their real satisfaction, and also turn that then into better, more tailored guidance briefings for our customers. And finally, also it is driving efficiency, although like I said, we don't see the AI replacing, especially in the enterprise segment, right? We don't see it replacing our AMs and our CSMs, but we see it giving them much more power and being much more strategic. And probably like everyone else, we're trying to stretch how many accounts one CSM can cover, one AM can cover, because we do also have all that pressure now from our investors. What's your revenue per employee? And my hope is with AI assistance, we can free up our customer success, our customer support, our AMs from the mundane work, and really get them to be much more strategic and proactive and focus on building empathetic relationships, really guiding our customers, which is, I think, still where I think that the humans can really add the unique value. And how are we seeing AI change software buying behavior? And G2 is a large software marketplace, so we do have, in a given year, we'll engage over 100 million buyers. So we're also monitoring how's that changing now with AI. And I think the biggest shift, no surprise, that we're all seeing is people are shifting from SEO. And actually the first 20 years of my career was all about how do you win on SEO. And I remember we were always trying to win on CPQ software against our competitors. But now people are starting in prompts, and especially my kids, our twin boys, I was talking to them about this. And my son Gavin just said, "Dad, no one goes to Google anymore. They all use ChatGPT." It was also interesting, I also asked him, what about Claude? He said, at least the college students, really all they're using is ChatGPT. And I think now people are starting with prompts. And here you can see, used to Google, maybe best CRM software. And actually, this is maybe a bad example, but the prompts are much longer. Because obviously now when you're prompting, you can say, hey, I'm a medical device company. I'm aiming to improve my customer success productivity. How do I do that? So the prompts are also getting much longer. But I think that's going to be the future. And specifically, now we do a buyer survey every few months of enterprise software buyers. And 87% in August said AI search is already changing how they're doing their research. 50% are starting now in AI search more often than Google. And so it's also quickly starting to happen with enterprise buyers. And no surprise, 34% find it more productive. And I think the most interesting thing, it's happening very quickly. We ran this same survey in April. And in April, it was 29% of buyers saying they're doing AI before Google, AI search before Google. And by August, it was already up to 50%. And likely this is only going to continue. And we also ask enterprise buyers, what are you using to do your research and to build your shortlists? And number one now is already AI chat. And so if somebody's looking for a customer success platform, they probably go to ChatGPT and say, what are the best customer success platforms? And or they might ask, like I said, just broader business questions, like how do I increase the productivity of my account managers? And that's the beauty of AI, right? You no longer have to necessarily search for a specific category. You can just ask it business questions. So that's the number one influencer at 51%. Software review sites like G2, are second at 43%, because I do believe people really want to hear from peer customers. And websites are further down. And most of us probably have great marketers, great websites, but most people are also skeptical, right? That's going to be the marketing spin. But obviously, ultimately, people do end up on the vendor websites as well. And half of enterprise buyers are actually using AI now as a reason to switch. So I think certainly those of you in SaaS, I think we're all adding AI features, but it is becoming, we're seeing it quickly become a key buying criterion because everyone sees the productivity impact. So having the best AI in your product really matters. So that was a little bit about how the buying trends are shifting towards AI. And I also wanted to share at least our initial thoughts on how can you win in this age of AI? How can you take advantage of this shift of buyers starting in AI instead of starting on search? And I think the SEO era, it was all about winning the click, and kind of on that quick keyword, how do you get them to engage with you? But now people are entering prompts, longer queries, longer questions, and it's now how do you make sure you can influence the answer? And some people are now calling them answer engines. And that's also this term, answer engine optimization, AEO. I think a lot of people are saying that's new SEO, or some people are calling it GEO, generative engine optimization. But I think no matter what you call it, I think this is where the buyer of the future is going to go. And maybe even your customer and support, maybe they'll just start on ChatGPT, even if it's a turn zero question. And so I think one of the most important things is to get your content out there so the answer engines can train on it. And that when people are making prompts relevant to your brand, to your customers, that you appear, and ideally you're cited by ChatGPT or by Gemini as one of the top sources of those answers, so that you do build your brand's trust and credibility through the answer engines. And what are the answer engines training on today? I think Reddit has been in the news a lot, certainly Wikipedia, and I think ChatGPT now has been crawling the whole internet for years, and so no surprise, Wikipedia, Reddit are the biggest horizontal training sets. Obviously, media sites like Forbes. We did do this analysis with a startup called Profound, and they're one of the emerging leaders in this world of AEO. They just raised money, I think, from Sequoia Capital. So we did this analysis together with them. And on software topics, G2 is a big influencer because just like Reddit, there's a lot of conversational content amongst customers, and that's what the LLMs love to train on, as well as all of these media sites. And I think that's one of the strategies, I think, is also making sure you're out there in more discussions. I think a lot of B2B brands are also now starting to discover the importance of Reddit and even being part of those conversations, because a lot of customers may be going there for support questions. Obviously, Reddit's also very noisy and maybe a lot of weird conversations. But we do think in B2B, it's actually also important to now be part of that conversation because more of your customers are going to go there over time. And I think it's also something the answer engines are not going to reference to train on. So it's important that you're actually part of the conversations and giving good answers on those platforms. And G2, in addition to reviews, we do have discussions as well. And you can also help seed those, with your FAQs, make sure there's good answers out there. And again, that's obviously beneficial to people coming to Reddit or coming to G2, but then it's also second order, it's all training content for the AEOs. So if your customer's going to ChatGPT, that content will also be picked up in their training and their answers. And so I think being relevant on these user-generated sites is now probably more important than ever. And actually one of the best training sets also now for the LLMs is actually your customer documentation. And so I think that actually makes it more valuable than ever, because having good, and most of you probably already have good public support documentation, customer forums, but I think those again become more important than ever. And it used to be hard for people to come to your customer docs and help sites, but now they can just go to ChatGPT. And if you have that content out there, well maintained, also in a digestible form, also on high performing web pages, then the LLMs can train on it. And when your customer's starting in ChatGPT, they can still get to your content through the training they've done. And so I think it's also a massive opportunity to get more value from the customer content you're probably already putting out there. And we do have a high influence. This is a bit of a, but like I said, it's not just G2, but I think being out on all these conversational sites will become increasingly important as more and more customers find their information through ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, whatever they're using. Obviously, overall, AI usage is growing, and you can see that here where also churn zero is being cited more and more. And we do have deeper analytics where you can see by LLM, ChatGPT, Perplexity, et cetera, where are you being cited, where are your competitors being cited, and where's there opportunity for you to be cited more. And we think that's certainly critical now for the future for your marketing, but I think it can also be a great channel for your customer success, content, and customer advice. And if you want to learn more, we have actually a whole category now on G2 for AEO to make sure you understand how is your brand showing up in the LLMs, how are you showing up in the answer engines, how's your competition showing up, and then optimizing that over time, because this is going to be the place where software buyers and customers discover you in the future. And to summarize, what do we believe are the keys to winning in this age of AI? And certainly, I think in any industry now, buyers are going to start in the answer engine. So how do you optimize your content, make sure that your brand shows up the way you want in the answer engines? And I think it's a combination of AEO strategy, having an AEO tool, but then also I think putting out more and more of your customer content, optimizing it. As I mentioned, your help documents, your support documents, your FAQs, your customer forums, as well as being on sites like Reddit and G2 where all this conversational content is, because ultimately that's what the LLMs are going to train on. I think secondly, there's big opportunity for self-service with AI agents. I'm sure a lot of you are doing this, but I think a lot of people are reporting a lot of success, including us at G2 with support and being able to deflect a lot of your level 1, maybe over time level 2 cases, so your customers get quicker answers. And obviously it frees up your team to be more strategic, be more proactive. I think in those of you in product, and I think we're seeing at G2, obviously with AI, there's ways to improve the user experience. We launched a whole new G2 AI site because we think a lot of people may not come to g2.com, but where it's all prompt-based. And probably a lot of products, a lot of user interfaces can be reimagined with AI-assisted prompts being first to make it easier for your customers to get at data, to use your apps. And I do think the expectation now for ROI is higher. And I think everyone, and also in AI, is talking about delivering outcomes. And I think that's more what customers are expecting. And I know some of the help desk vendors, like one of our board members is Tom Eggemeyer, the CEO of Zendesk. And what Zendesk is doing, they're now selling customer support case resolutions and charging per resolution, like the actual outcome, versus traditionally we all charge for seats. And I think that's a big shift that most people are expecting to accelerate in software. But it also leads the customers to be more focused on those ROI metrics. What's the actual outcome you're delivering for your customer? And I think a lot of trends now towards even pricing on that. I think certainly in customer success support software, that's the trend now. And I think Salesforce is also offering, I believe, Agentforce now, at $2 a conversation. So it could be based on usage, could be based on outcome. And we're also looking at this at G2. We've had more traditional SaaS pricing, but could we just align with our customers, for example, based on how many leads we deliver them, how many customers we deliver them. So I think it's also a time to rethink your pricing and packaging, and how do you align it even more with customer value and outcomes. So those were some of my thoughts, but I think Yuman's going to come back up, and we're going to have a conversation, and hopefully with many of you.
Thank you, Godard. All right, let's hear it for Godard. All right. Let's maybe, do you want to connect? You generously got.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And if you want to, I do love LinkedIn. So please connect with me if you want to have more conversations.
All right. I'll open up for audience questions in a little bit, but let me start by, I always want people to have something to bring back that they have to do. And I wrote a couple of things down. One is, we all always want great customer reviews, right? So hopefully you're doing that, like just making the ask. For those of you who use Turn Zero, go to the Genius Bar if you don't already do it, and we'll have a really good way for you to ask at the exact right time when they're ready to write the review. So let's just do that first. But you and I were talking about, like should customer marketing now be part of the customer team rather than the marketing team? Like, should we shift something around in order to really double down, right, on what you're saying is that it's the content that really matters, it's the review that matters. Any suggestions for folks about maybe organizational change to take advantage of this new future?
Yeah, and I do think in customer success, you're probably in the best position to ask for customer reviews and customer feedback. Many of you probably already do. Because we do find the best ask is always from the CSM actually working with the account and the customer.
Yeah.
And after you get them live, right, if you ask more as a personal favor and they know you as a human. And we do find then, if it's totally personalized from the CSM to the customer, let's say right after a successful go live, then you get probably 25% review conversion. Mm-hmm. And you actually don't even, and some people obviously offer thank you gifts. I don't know if you're doing that here, Turn Zero swag or an Amazon certificate or whatever, because it does take time to leave a review. But we find if it's a personalized ask at the right time from the CSM, right, then you don't have to provide any incentive, and they will do it because they know they value your CSM who took good care of them. Right. So they'll do it based on the relationship. But it's hard to scale that. So I do think the best practice is to have your customer organization own that. Right. And then make it part of their workflow. And some people, and we actually did this at Steelbrick, now Salesforce CPQ, which we built in parallel to G2, but it was part of our CSM's objectives. Mm-hmm. Obviously they have to get the customer happy and live, but we said, hey, until you get a review, and at that time we were pushing reviews to the Salesforce App Exchange. and to G2, but we said, hey, until you get those 2 reviews, you kind of don't get full credit for the happy customer, which ultimately would even influence their comp. So we made it kind of part of the CSM plan.
Okay.
And it worked well. And at the time we had a competitor, Aptus, that, I don't know if any of you, hopefully you don't remember them, no. But they didn't have such good customer success, so we made it very strategic. We're like, hey, we want every customer ultimately to write reviews on the App Exchange and on G2 to validate that. And then we used it in our marketing because we said, hey, obviously it's just a claim, because CPQ software was always hard to get to go live, maybe still is, but our claim was like, we'll get you live in weeks. With them, it might take months or years, but it's just a claim.
Right.
But then we could prove it with hundreds of reviews, and all of a sudden, our prospects believed it.
Got it. Maybe a question for the audience here. When you ask for reviews, who's asking for it? I'm gonna ask, is it the marketing team or the customer team? For those of you, is it the marketing team that's asking for a review? All right, so very few. And then how about the customer team? All right, okay. So most of you are customer team. And there's some hands that didn't go up. Maybe you're not asking for reviews, so let's change that, okay?
And I imagine you can also build that right in the churn zero, right, as a standard
absolutely.
customer flow.
It should be a part of it with the right messaging at the right time. I think that's super important, because it's terrible to like do a batch review. Like it's end of the quarter, it's time to do a review. And you're like, we're just going to send out 1 million asks. Like it's just not. That's not a great way of doing things. Switching vendors. Is it easier now? Do you think it's easier now to just like switch?
Well, I think it depends.
Okay.
You know, I think in some tools like these coding tools, it's very easy to switch, and probably all our engineers are doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and like one day it's like Cursor, then it's Lovable, right? There's sort of a hot new one every week.
Yeah.
Because the engineers can, and they do just switch to the hottest, newest, best tool. Mm-hmm. But I do think in more enterprise, like, you know, I think if you're still doing enterprise workflows and integrations, then I think switching is still hard. You know, so I think it depends on the nature of the product and the user, and especially how deeply is it integrated in enterprise workflows and systems.
Right.
And I remember when I worked at Salesforce, that was one of the reasons I loved App Exchange partners, because they had this statistic, you know, like with every App Exchange app integrated to Salesforce, retention rate would go up. And I think this is still true for Salesforce today, right? But once Salesforce Sales Cloud, if you have like 20 apps integrated, now Sales Cloud is very sticky. You know, so I still think that's true. Although at the margin, I think we're also seeing there's certainly more competition in software, right? Because it's easier now for new startups to emerge and probably, you know, get to feature parity or even do some things new. So I do think there's more pressure on the innovation side. But I still think like true enterprise, like deep enterprise workflows and with a lot of integrations can still be quite sticky.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. I'm trying to think, you know, for all of us in this room, in general, is GRR just going to be a few points lower forever, you know? And so therefore, I mean, I think we'll have to watch the benchmarks and see what happens. We've done some benchmarking, and it has come down over the years, GRR and NRR, and it's flattened out. The assumption is that that's going to come back up, right? Because it's been a tough few years for tech, but maybe it won't, right? So I'm watching that trend because it actually bumped down a few points. True. And so are we like bumping along? Like, is this the new normal down here? So it's just because of the switching and the, you know, so easy to get a new recommendation.
True. And I will say, I mean, compared to, and you and I remember like the heady days of like the SaaS boom, right? During ZIRP.
Yeah.
Because like 2019, 2021, everyone was doing like, 130%.
NRR, yeah.
Yeah, now I think 110 is considered good.
Considered good, yeah, very good. It depends on what vertical you're in, right?
Yeah,
SMB,
just in general.
it's a miracle, right?
True.
Enterprise, you're probably
SMB, if you're 100, you're really good.
You're doing really good. Yeah. So let's make sure the SMB people in here. Like,
but I think in that sense, you're probably right. I mean, it probably won't ever be as good as it was in 2021.
Right. Well, yeah, right. That was just the heady days. Let me ask, for those of you who are budget planning for 2026, have you been given guidelines on productivity gains already? And if yes, is it 10 to 15% productivity gains or more? Like, is anyone being asked of that now for 2026? Okay, all right. So
We are asking for 20% next year.
you're asking for 20% productivity
Doing our
gains.
plan, yes.
Okay. So you're going to grow the company at 20%, but not hire anyone new, or?
That's the goal. It is also our goal to grow over 20%.
Okay.
So
So basically, you want to grow without hiring new people.
that's probably the rough guideline, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And I think that should be very doable.
Which
you
is
know.
probably going to be the ask, right? I think it feels like maybe layoffs are kind of behind. There may be a mix that you may have to like adjust, like maybe more here, less, fewer here. But it feels like we're going to grow. We're going to try to aggressively grow again, but you're just not going to have as many. You're not going to have heads to do
Yes.
it. Okay. Okay.
That's fair. And I think it was the Shopify founder, like his famous quote, right? Like, before I let you hire anyone, like, prove to me why you can't do it with AI. And I think that's a good philosophy right now, to just challenge your teams, because there are usually new AI tools, growth hacks you can do, to get more productivity out of the existing team versus hiring more.
I would encourage you to really take this to heart a little bit. Godard is not an insane guy. Like, he's not, you don't ride the waves that early, right? Like, you're actually pretty prudent about what you take on, and so if he's asking his folks for this type of productivity, right? You're asking reasonable things of your employees, and that's 20%.
I'm definitely not Elon.
You're not Elon, right? All right. Hey, any questions from the audience? Feel free to raise your hand, and Godard here has a ton of experience. Let me repeat the question, so those who haven't heard it. So this is a great question. Basically, you mentioned letting the LLMs scrape your knowledge base, right? So that it can answer questions about your product and service, but many of us have that gated, right? Because we don't want just anyone seeing it. How do you how do you balance the gated, do you ungate? What's your recommendation?
Yeah. I would ungate right now, because I think the downside of, if your customer's in ChatGPT, either prospect or customer, like not getting your answer, I think the downside that's greater than your competition seeing it, so. Andy, like I said, it's like great. It's almost like in the old days, like you were also an SEO. It's also like almost like great AEO content for free, because you already have it.
Yeah.
And we've also been discussing with our board, because our board's also like, well, they obviously would love us to monetize our data more, and they're like, sometimes they challenge me, like, why are you allowing OpenAI to train on your data for free? And obviously, I would love to at some point do a deal like Reddit. They have the most famous licensing deals where they're doing hundreds of millions of licensing. But I also said to my board, I'd rather risk like not getting any monetization for it than irrelevance, And I do think AI is one of those moments where I think the greater risk is being irrelevant in the age of AI. That's why right now I would ungate it and use that great content you have, and then now you're using it, also kind of as a marketing weapon, and you already have the content. And your customers will be happier, because I think more and more customers probably will just start in ChatGPT, and it'll also save you time, because your CSMs will have less follow-up questions.
I also, I think being super paranoid about your competitors, I want to know if you agree with me on this, is overrated. I just think, you cannot think about your competitors, but being super paranoid about them, I think actually is the distraction in running a business. I know, so I would say ungate if you can. And by the way, we gate too, so we're gonna have that conversation. All right, note to self.
Yeah.
Ben? All right, there was a question over there.
Because it's free marketing lift. And I would just say, if I may comment on your comment, I would agree, too much competitor paranoia, not helpful. And you've actually always done a good job of that, where I know, Nick at, one of your competitors, and I do think, and you guys have done it together, right? You can build a category.
Absolutely.
And I joked about Aptus, but they were very helpful to us in our CPQ days, because they marketed the crap out of CPQ, as did we, right? So together we made the market bigger.
Right.
And I think that's a good way to look at your competition. Obviously you want to beat them, but at the same time, you can both make the market bigger together.
I mean, the worst kind of ecosystem is like you look around and your company's like, oh, they're all terrible, and you want really strong competitors, right? And so that's a good thing. All right, there was a question over there. Yep.
First of all, I want to give this guy a shout out. He's got the hardest job in the room, running the mic around. I have a question around in-app G2 reviews. So we just rolled out Chameleon, which is a in-app like Pendo competitor.
Oh,
and
cool.
One of the things they support is doing G2 reviews in-app without leaving. Have you guys seen increased reviews for people when you're presenting it to them without having to leave the app versus sending them to G2 directly?
Yeah, no, I do think in-app is a great way to do it. You mentioned you're using Chameleon. We do have a Pendo integration or like a Delighted integration. But in terms of customer workflow, like that is a great time. Well, and all the consumer sites do it. If you're on your iPhone, you like using an app, they're like, do you like my app? Yes. Once you click yes, they're always like, would you leave a review in the App Store? And so we do think using in-app also, if you're in SaaS, is a great way to do it, right? Because you have some customers set feedback widget and then putting it right in that workflow. And we're trying to make that easier. So if you need help, let me know, but like try to make it easier to make an embedded experience for the customer where they can just, or even they write your NPS or your customer sat feedback, your CSAT feedback, right? You can just be like, hey, by the way, would you also share it on G2? And again, in consumers, like hotels always do that. Like I stayed at the Hilton here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And whenever I leave them a review, they're always like, hey, would you also share it on TripAdvisor? Right. So doing that 1-2, yes, highly recommended. And again, it also just gets you a natural continuous flow versus doing like one-off campaigns at the end of the quarter. So embedding in the CSM process at the right time, go live, but then also embedding it in-app, I would say yes, that's another great best practice.
I also think omni-channel. So, there are people who just immediately like shut down whatever's in front of them in the app, right? Like, I don't care, like go away, I'm ready to work. So, but some people will react to that, but there's a combination of reminders, emails, and then I'd love maybe during a QBR, right, as part of the ask as well. So these are things that I would suggest. Question over there.
Okay, you didn't have to run too far. So with the goals that your board is putting forward, I'm curious, have they considered what type of enablement strategy will allow you to achieve those goals, or have you considered that? Because obviously I think with more tooling, there's also more learning that comes with it. So I'd love to hear just sort of how that's being discussed at that level. Yeah, no, we're definitely, I don't think our board is so much bring up, they just want the outcome, But we have a good CRO here in Chicago, Eric Gilpin. But one of his first hires was Emily Hyde. She's also here in Chicago. And they'd worked together at Career Builder and Upwork, but we're building much more enablement. Because you're right, with all this new tooling, getting all of our revenue organization, right, sales, customer success, support, enabling them more quickly, because our product's changing more quickly, probably all products are. So I'd agree with you, like you definitely have to invest more in enablement. And the other thing, our CRO, and he also owns customer success, we're discussing different org structures, but Matt Ryan, our head of customer success, who might even be here. Is Matt here? Right here. Yes, Matt's here.
Hi, Matt.
So if you want to compare notes, Matt's a great guy to compare notes with because he's also built many customer success orgs. Before G2, he's also Slack, Upwork. But anyway, we're definitely, you can ask Matt more about this, but also how do we enable our CSMs? We're also trying to build more technical consulting capabilities now to help our customers more. But yes, more knowledge, and we're trying to have deeper, more technical, making our AMs more technical, our CSMs more technical. So it's both hiring and then enabling, but because I think if you're just kind of a relationship manager and you aren't deep in the technology and best practices, I think you're less helpful to the customer. So yes, more enablement.
All right, I'm gonna take the last question. So Godard and I probably hang out once a year at some conference, and we always end up talking about family. So you have college-age kids. I have a child who just graduated a few years ago. What are your kids going to do when they graduate? Are they going to be a plumber or an influencer?
Influencer.
No, but are you worried about AI? Like, are you like I'm a little bit like. I mean, I think children. Like, I know my son had like a great education. Hopefully had a good upbringing. But I am still like so freaked out about the AI stuff for him. And I know he's going to do great, but there's just a part of me that says, hey, is there going to be like this sort of lost generation where they don't pick up AI fast enough and they sort of lose out on a few years of productivity because people are not hiring? Like, do you have those concerns about kids of a certain age?
I think conceptually, yes, have the concerns, because everyone's saying, oh, the entry-level positions. Like I started as an entry-level consultant business analyst, right? Like, are those jobs still going to be there? Because the AI could do a lot of, I was just like doing research, building slides,
Yeah.
AI can probably do a lot of that. So I have that worry. But then I think one of the biggest things that kind of has flipped me to the other side, more glass half full for that generation, like my son did an internship with a small kind of hedge fund family office. And frankly, he just was using AI all summer, including he started, and he's not a computer science major, but he started vibe coding with Claude. And he's using this AI to build all his financial models. But when I just saw how quickly he's adopting AI and how it's giving him more power, I honestly worry more about our generation.
Right.
Like Yuman, you and I,
we're done. I mean, we're just,
these 25-year-old entrepreneurs that are going to be 10x better CEOs than you or I with AI. So I do think if the younger generation leans into it, and in college it's naturally happening, and in college a lot of times they call it cheating now. And I've also, like my son also told me, they're actually very worried about this because they see a lot of their classmates. They claim they're not doing it, but their classmates. But even now they do like these take-home exams, like proctored, where the camera's on you. But he said what they now do, they hold their like mobile phone like below the table and like point the camera up. They're still looking at the camera, they take a picture, send it to ChatGPT on their mobile and get the answer. And I actually honestly for that, I think the professors have to adapt faster.
Right.
Because I don't think take-home exams can be possible anymore, right? But I think they're all using AI like crazy in college. And in business, there really is no cheating. There's cheating, but like, if something makes you more productive, like we're not going to make our junior people hide the phone. We're like, no, just use ChatGPT.
Cheat. Why don't you cheat?
Yeah, like make yourself more productive using AI. Get to an answer faster. And obviously in business, that's not cheating,
It's a little cheating. But hey, maybe that's how he end this. Like, definitely cheat. Okay. That's the only way you're going to get. But anyway, Godard, thank you for joining us. That was fantastic. I really appreciate you being here.